Welcome and thank you for sticking around, I guess, to listen to my portion of the program. I sure love what Andrew has to say. He is encouraging, and I'm blessed to be able to work with him. So today we're going to talk about a concept called Easy Plus One, and we've entitled this presentation Easy Plus One: Making Sense of Teaching Writing. And I'll come back and explain exactly what we mean by that in just a little while. I'm just going to take a moment to let you meet the King family. This is my family, and this is just a couple years back, so they're a little bit bigger than this. But I have 4 children. We live here in Oklahoma, and we have a grand time together. So we actually live right in front of a sod farm. So it's like we live in the country, but we also live in the city. So that's pretty exciting. So I would like to ask. Consider which of these describes your student or which describe your students. Would you say that they love to write? Would you say they hate to write? Would you say maybe they're somewhere in between? Maybe they haven't done a lot of writing yet. Or you might be in that category of people that has exceptional needs. Your students have some needs that go beyond what many families would have to deal with, and so you have even more maybe challenge. I mean, all these things kind of show you that this is where very many people are, and so all these different stations that life can bring means that teaching writing can be really challenging, because not only in the best of times are you kind of sitting there scratching your head. I mean, how do I handle this? How do I manage this? But really, the variety of people that we deal with, the variety of children that we deal with, can really make teaching writing and approaching teaching writing a challenge. Because how do you have a one-size-fits-all kind of program? What about grading? That comes up a lot, right? I mean, like when you're wondering, how do I teach well? How do I make sense of writing, and how do I grade it? How do I grade it objectively so my student isn't frustrated? How do I hear about these things called rubrics that are supposed to make it so I can give good grades to my student, and they can feel good about what I've said, and it's always the same. But it's really not easy to do that. I mean, what about grading? How do we deal with that? How much should I help? I mean, when I want my child to write, I mean, should I just kind of throw them to the wolves? Is that the best thing? Is that the best solution? I mean, sometimes that's kind of the common wisdom, right? I mean, oh, you need to figure it out, because if you figure it out, then you'll learn something. But sometimes my child cries, and I want to help them. How do I navigate that? And many children, of course, also will tell you that they just don't know what to write. It's not that they wouldn't want to respond to what you have for them. They don't want to. It's not that they don't want to respond to the assignments they're given, but they just don't know what to write down, and that can be very frustrating. I mean, imagine that you're asked as a 5th grader, you're asked, come up with something really good to write. Go. Right? I mean, that can be very challenging, even for an adult, and for a child who is also trying to figure out how to spell the right words and use the right grammar and put the right things on paper. I mean, this can just be overwhelming. And then you may also wonder, how much should I expect from them? On the far end, when I finally have the paper all done, should it be flawless? I mean, that's what I should want, right? I mean, I should expect amazing things from my children. I shouldn't have to put up with kind of ripshod kind of writing. No, do it again. I mean, that should be a great educator, right? Someone who's going to make them do really, really well. Or maybe someone says, well, I don't want to be negative, but I also don't want to not challenge them at all. These are questions that plague every parent's mind that takes on homeschooling as the ministry that God has given them. Today we're going to have in our workshop, we're going to have an agenda that covers these areas. It says, how is IEW different? We're going to ask that question. We're going to compare it to other programs that are out there. And I'm going to show you how IEW grapples with and tackles these issues, and really, I think, comes out on top. We're going to talk about the kind of writing that IEW does teach. What styles of writing, what types of writing? Is it, we're talking about narratives, we're talking about reports, what kinds of things does IEW actually teach? We're going to talk about who IEW is for, and we're going to talk about the ever enigmatic EZ+1. I'm going to explain what that means, because it's really an approach, and it's an approach that I think is very important. And then we're going to talk very briefly about where you can begin if you decide you want to work with us. And then we'll also touch briefly on some of the other language arts. This is really about writing. But IEW does also address phonics, spelling, grammar, literature, poetry, and public speaking. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. Well, where do other programs begin? That's a question, right? So often, people will hand you, or your children, the curriculums will instruct you to give them a blank page, all right? Now, that blank page is handed to the child, and along with that, the curriculum would say, ask them a prompt. Ask them, what did you do during your summer vacation? Or write a paragraph about you, right? And of course, this can be a real troublesome situation for a lot of students. What did I do during my summer vacation? I don't know. I swam. I was hot. Help me. I don't know what to write, right? I mean, they want to write something good, but they don't know what to put down. You might have the other side as well. You might have another student who's so verbose that she is typically a she, but it could be a he also. Will write and write and write, and this, and goes on and on and on. Has a tremendous aptitude for putting words on paper, but really, you're kind of sitting there with this 10-page monstrosity in your hands, and you're saying, I'm really glad this child is motivated enough to put these words on paper, but I'm struggling with how to help them to kind of bring it into a cohesive format that someone would want to read, and to really kind of temper some of that verbosity. And of course, in the write a paragraph about you, I've actually seen a student sample, and in which the student said, "I have hair." That was one of his statements. I have hair. So students, they're grasping for something to put down, but at the end of the day, they know what they hand in is not really that good. They might go in the refrigerator, and you might praise them, but they know at the end of the day that what they just did was something that's probably not publishable in a professional manner, and no one's going to really want to read it. They know that, and that's a little bit disconcerting to the student. It's going to be frustrating, and students, they know that if something is not, or we should know that when students do something that they don't think they can do, they're not very motivated to do that. And there's a great talk by Andrew Pudewa, the Teaching Boys, that if you men are able to go to that tomorrow, he'll talk a little bit about that. But he has several other talks on motivation. I would encourage you to consider those at some point, or see if you can get a hold of those at some point. So I want to talk a little bit about how IEW is different. IEW doesn't begin with a blank page. We have no problem with a blank page eventually. Once a student is ready for that, we can go to the blank page. But we start with note making. We actually give them a source text. We give them pre-written material that the student is going to take notes from to create an outline. And they will then use that outline to make their own prose. We're going to teach them to write from notes. So we start by teaching them how to take notes, great notes with what we call a keyword outline. I'll explain that a little later. And then how to write from those notes. Then we go into, after we've completed those first 2 units, we then go into retelling narrative stories. At this point, we're going to start learning how to use what we call a story sequence chart. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're going to be using stories and using questions, great questions about those stories to help build those keyword outlines, rather than taking them directly from a source text. Later, we're going to go on to Unit 4, where we're going to summarize a reference. We're going to be using facts that we find inside a source text. Maybe that source text is about king crabs, or maybe it's about a creature called the olm. There's fascinating creatures that are out there that we try to use often for our source text, and you're trying to find the facts that are interesting, important, or relevant to build a keyword outline. So we use facts now to build a keyword outline. We ask our question, which facts are important, interesting, or relevant? Later, we're going to go into Unit 5. Now back over on the right-hand side here. This is kind of the creative side, by the way, the Unit 3, Unit 5. Writing for pictures. We're going to give a student 3 different pictures, and they're going to ask the question, what is the main thing happening in this picture? Then we're going to ask questions of what's in the picture, who's in the picture, when is it happening, what's happening inside the picture, what's happening outside the picture that I can't see, what's invisible. There's a lot of questions. Again, we're asking questions over and over and over again. And you'll notice that. Unit 3, we're asking questions about the story. Unit 4, we're asking about importance and relevance. Unit 5, we're asking about, for the student to kind of consider the environment through questions. Unit 6, we're going to go back over onto the left side. That's more the factual side. And now, instead of just a single reference, we're going to have multiple references. we're going to be doing what many of us would consider a report, maybe from our high school years or something. And we're going to ask those questions again, which is most important, but then we're going to consider which is most important among the most important that we found. And we're going to bring those together into a single fused outline. Again, I'll go over this a little bit later as far as what that means, but you can see back and forth. We're going to go back and forth between the creative and also then the factual. And every time we do that, we're training the student, not only with different structural elements, we're also training them to ask really good questions. So finally, when we reach Unit 7, what we call inventive writing, a blank page, the student has had tremendous practice asking great questions. And at that point, we teach them to ask questions from their brain. They're going to be master question askers from their brain. And they're going to ask questions about whatever prompt we give them. They're going to say, what do I know about that? What are some things that are related to that? They're going to ask great questions. And at that point, a student is well equipped to be able to take on, what did you do this summer? Or tell me a paragraph, write a paragraph about yourself. They're ready for it. We don't stop there, though. We go on. Unit 8 is going back into the dreaded essay, but it's not dreaded anymore because by this point, the students are so well versed in this methodology of structure and style that they can take on just a little bit more and build an essay from what used to be a summarized, a summary of multiple references. Then we go on into a Unit 9. This is formal critique, and I don't know if any of you have ever considered the word critique before, but it's actually critiquing. It's actually saying something about what someone else has written. And if you consider that for a moment, that's really called, in common vernacular, a book report. And I don't know about you, but when I was in, I believe it was 5th grade, I remember specifically being assigned a book report. And I don't know that I cried, but I was certainly very frustrated with that process because they asked me, my instructor asked me to kind of summarize the book, and I'm thinking, what do I say? This book is huge. I mean, how do I navigate this? How do I put this together and tell you about this book? And is that all I'm supposed to do? I'm just supposed to summarize? We show students not only how to summarize that story in Unit 3, we're telling narrative stories. We're also going to show them how to say something of value about what they report on. So it's kind of a neat idea that we kind of at the end of the process do a book report. When in so many different writing methodologies, a book report is much earlier. I found that fascinating. Okay, so just very briefly, I'm going to talk about each of our units. This is kind of an example of what the structure of what a keyword outline would look like. Okay, it would start with a main sentence at the top. That's that Roman numeral 1 there, followed by multiple other lines, each one being a sentence. And we are just taking notes for each sentence. Okay, and we're gonna practice with that a little bit here with this source text. This is called "The Dog in the Shadow," and I'm just going to read it out loud, and then we're going to just kind of go through it together. A lucky dog had found a fresh bone and was carrying it home to enjoy. On his way, he had to cross a low bridge over a calm stream. As he crossed, he looked down and saw his own reflection in the water beneath. Thinking it was another dog with another bone, he wanted to have that also. So he growled and snapped at the other dog in the water. But as he opened his mouth, the bone fell out. It dropped into the stream and was gone forever. Okay, so short little story, kind of an interesting story, and of course there's morals we could draw out of that. But just for the moment, I want to look at the very first sentence. A lucky dog had found a big fresh bone and was carrying it home to enjoy. For just a few moments, consider 3, no more than 3, of those words that you find to be the most important words in that sentence. What are the 3 words that best, if you were to extract them, would describe the contents of that sentence? So that if you were to look at it again, like your 3 words, you could say, I think I know what this sentence is kind of about. Take just a moment. I'm going to move this over here and to source text over here. I'm going to show you kind of a few words that might work for this. How about bone, home, and enjoy? Now remember, I already know this whole thing is about a dog. All right, so bone, home, and enjoy are the 3 words that we selected. But you could pick other ones. You could say, I think dog and bone and home. Maybe those be your 3 words. And students will pick different kinds of words. What we wouldn't want to pick is something like a or the, because see, what's going to happen is later on, I'm going to read from my outline. I'm going to use my outline to actually create my own prose. So it needs to be something that gives me a great idea of the main content of that sentence. So I'm just going to move through these other ones. We might say bridge, calm, and stream. Again, you might say cross, bridge, calm. There's other options that are there. Reflection, water, beneath. The next one there. Now, this right here illustrates another point. Now, I wanted to limit us to 3 words, but you can actually have as many abbreviations or symbols as you wish. And so, and they're free. You can have 3 words plus as many abbreviations, symbols, and numbers as you wish. And so here, you'll notice that we put a D with a circle around it. Well, what's that? What does that mean? Well, it's talking about another dog. I know what I'm talking about, dogs here, and I probably could have used that earlier on in my outline. That's fine. For bone, I could have used a little picture of a bone, right? So there's some ways that the student can even try to. We give them some tools that they can use to try to extract this content, because it can be difficult for some students, especially if they're getting going. All right, there's a growl there, snapped, open, and fell, and then dropped, streamed, and gone. And again, you can pick any words you like in there, as long as you're going to be able to use those to create prose later. Let me show you how that works. We're actually going to use that outline to then we're going to prove that outline. Okay, I'm going to put my source text away. And now I'm going to look at just my keywords. And I'm going to try to use those to speak out loud. You see over on the upper right-hand corner, it says read, think, look up, speak. This is what we want students to do while they're proving their outline. We want them to read what they have. In this case, I have bone, home, and joy. I'm going to think about what I want to say. So I'm going to think about that. And then I'm going to look up, all right? And I'm going to speak that out without looking at my outline. Now, if I need to look back down to remember something, that's fine, no problem. But I'm going to look up and I'm going to speak, and I'm going to share what I have to say. And so in this particular case, I might say, a dog found a bone that he wanted to take home to enjoy. Right? I mean, that's a full sentence. It's fully an English sentence, and that's what we care about. We don't care that it sounds exactly like the original. We want it to be a full English sentence, but we don't care if it sounds like the original. And I find this fascinating as well. You'll note that as we read, think, look up, and speak, we're really, in some sense, teaching our students to be involved in basic public speaking. It's not the reason we do this specifically, but I do find that fascinating that there's kind of an ancillary bonus, an ancillary benefit to this methodology. And we would go through this entire outline, okay? We would go through about the bridge, and we talk about the reflection, and all of that. We go through the entire thing. If every single line made sense, and we said, okay, I understand which line it says, and I understand what they're supposed to mean, I move on to the next process. If one of the lines doesn't make sense to me, if I can't remember, I'm like, oh, what is that D with a circle around it? I can look back at my source text. There's no problem with me looking back. It's a test of the outline, not a test of the student's memory of the dog and the shadow. So I want to prove the outline, and once I know that I understand my outline, I'm going to write notes. I'm going to actually then write down in prose form my outline. Okay, so I would write, a dog found a bone that he wanted to take home to enjoy. As he crossed a bridge over a calm stream, he saw his reflection in the water beneath. I would write this out in prose. And we're training them to do that. Once the students understand how to make keyword outlines and they're able to understand how to write those into prose, we move them into retelling narrative stories. And again, we're building the keyword outline using a different methodology. Now we're asking questions. Instead of asking what's the most important words in the sentence, now we're asking questions about who's in the story, what do they like. We're still answering with a keyword outline, right? So if I'm talking about the rabbit and the hare and the tortoise, I'm going to say, well, who's in the story? Oh, the speedy hare and the lethargic tortoise, whatever I come up with. And I put that in my keyword outline. What do they like? Oh, the hare is prideful, and the tortoise is slow and but persevering, whatever. So we work with stories to ask these questions. We're just beginning to ask questions. We're asking questions about very concrete content, and the students are able to build that. And you'll notice over on the right-hand side that each paragraph has a job. The first paragraph is going to talk about characters and setting. The second is going to talk about the conflict, the problem. The third is going to talk about the climax and resolution. And we do that. We have very, very concrete structures because students are just learning. Later, those inhibitions can come off, but as we're training them to write, we need to give them very specific guidelines, very clear assignments, and so we are very, very clear about what we expect, and so that's why there's such structure in what we do. Unit 4, summarizing the reference. Now, instead of using a story, now we're using factual content again, but we're doing that by asking ourselves the question, which of these facts, maybe I have 15 facts in a source text, which of these facts is most interesting, important, or for older students, or maybe more advanced students maybe, which one is relevant? And we're asked those questions, and I'm going to choose maybe only 5 to 7 of those facts that are in that 15 fact source text. Now, that's not overly difficult. I mean, for a young student, that can be pretty challenging. For an adult, we can kind of navigate that. But imagine, as those facts pile up, as you start getting into 20 and 30 and 50 facts, bringing all of that into a summary can be very, very challenging. And so we're training the students to think and ask the question of what's most interesting, relevant, or important. It's very, very helpful for a student later on as they grow and develop. Oh, one more thing. We do introduce at this point something called the topic clincher rule. That's where the clincher repeats or reflects 2 to 3 key words from that topic sentence. See, we're even starting to give them some tools to make their structure cohesive, right? So that the clincher goes with the topic and the entire paragraph kind of wraps itself together and comes together nicely. There's also, we then move on to Unit 5, writing from pictures. And in this case, we have 3 different pictures that we're giving here for the student about this bird. And we're going to ask questions. We're going to ask about the central facts. A bird pecked at a hose, maybe in this first picture. We're going to ask the question, who is this bird? What is the hose? Where are they at? When is this? Is this morning? Is this evening? Why is the bird doing that? And we can answer those questions with our keyword outline. The student's going to answer those questions with a few sentences. They're going to have a clincher at the end. Then they're going to move on to the next picture, and they're going to report on that picture. And this is really event description. It can kind of sound like a story a little bit, but it's really about event description. But it allows for a lot of creativity for the students to kind of come up with their own creative solutions here. I mean, this bird, that might not be a hose. That could be, maybe that's a creature of some kind. Maybe that's strange credulity, but students will come up with creative kinds of things that happen. Maybe the hose wasn't from the birds pecking on it that it sprung a leak. Maybe it sprung a leak because it's super old. Or maybe a kid shot out with a BB gun. I don't know. So students will be creative with that, and but they learn event description, which can be very helpful. And I see that as kind of a neat, almost journalistic exercise, which I think is fascinating as well. We move back to Unit 6. We're going to summarize multiple references. Remember how we summarize those? We asked what was most interesting, relevant, or important, and we did that with one source. Well, now we're going to look at multiple sources, maybe 3 of them, possibly even more, as the student gets better and better at this process. But initially, we're going to look maybe at 3 sources, and we're going to take a single topic A in this particular case, and we're going to ask, what's the most interesting, relevant, or important facts from each source on that topic. All right, and we're going to go through each source and find those facts and do that. And then we're going to bring them all down into a fused outline. That's what we're going to actually write from, is that fused outline. But see, I have to ask, which one of these do I actually want to bring into my outline? And which one goes with which fact? Which fact operates well with other facts that are similar? And how can I organize those? I mean, there's a lot of questions that can be asked there as we're bringing that down to the fused outline that really hone this process for the student. Unit 7, inventive writing. After we're done with that summarizing multiple references, we're going to go to Unit 7, inventive writing. This is really taking notes from your brain, as I mentioned earlier. Andrew says that we take notes from your brain. I mean, you really can't get anything out of a brain that isn't in there to begin with. So you might as well ask your brain some questions. I mean, that's really what you need to start doing as you're learning to think, because that's really what thinking is, right? And so we're going to give these students structure to ask their brain great questions. And we're going to ask maybe about their dog. What do you like about your dog? Where's your dog live? Where's your dog eat? There's different questions that you can ask about the subject matter that you're trying to write about. But then we also add an introduction and a conclusion to this process. We're going to teach them actually to introduce their idea with an intention getter and maybe talk about the background of it and state their 3 topics. Then they can have this fun time talking about their 3 topics. And by the way, these 3 topics sometimes are wild and crazy things. Andrew talks about some aliens of the planet Zug, he calls them, and that's his creative idea that he throws out to kids sometimes. They think that's fun. But then at the end, the conclusion, we restate those 3 topics, right? We're bringing that all back together. And then we're going to talk about what is most significant among them and why. And so, there's some structure that we're bringing into play there that is very important, because next we're going to the formal essay. But you'll notice that what we just did here in Unit 7, with the introduction and the conclusion, our 3 paragraphs, looks an awful lot like an essay, right? Now we're doing factual content, okay? But as far as the structure, the students are already ready to go. They're already ready to produce an essay. And at this point, we ask, of course, I see those conclusions of the conclusion. We say, what is most important and why? And that's really what an essay is, right? It's a report on something maybe, but then it says something that you think about that thing. And that's what really defines an essay more than anything. And so, of course, we also have this little rule in the lower right-hand corner there. We have no I. You're not supposed to use the word I. You're not supposed to say, I think that King Henry was mean or whatever. You can say King Henry was mean, because they know you're the one writing. And so we teach them to communicate in a more professional tone, and students respond very well to this whole process. And we notice how we got here bit by bit. Well, finally we come to the creme de la creme, the formal critique at the very end. And really all it is that Unit 3 story sequence chart that we had earlier, where we asked the questions about the story. We just produce that in the middle, and we throw a introduction and conclusion on it. And that conclusion really says, what did I like or dislike about the story, and why? And if there's any messages or themes. Again, we're not using the word I think, or I consider, or whatever. But we're showing them how to ask great questions about this literature. And we're able to do that because we've trained them bit by bit in a very sequential manner how to get there. So that's kind of our structural models. And if you look on the left here, that's kind of what's on the inside of your car, right? It doesn't look like anything particularly beautiful, but it's very essential, right? The idea of how we put words together. But the problem with structure is that it can be pretty dry, right? I mean, if you consider like a really poorly written textbook, right? It has maybe some great content in it, but no one really wants to read it because it's painful, right? By contrast, look over on the right-hand side. The elements that are on the outside of a car are not necessarily the things that are going to make the car run smoothly. They're not going to keep you safe, but man, they look good, right? That's the style. And in my mind, style is kind of like any political speech you've ever heard, right? I mean, it sounds so good, but it says absolutely nothing, right? Like there's just style. So that's why we want to have structure and style. We want to have something that's of value to say, presented in a way that people can disseminate and think about, and maybe they can even persuade them, but they have to actually want to listen to it. They have to actually want to read it. And so we want to use structure and style. That style is so helpful in making readership, make people want to read what you've written. So we do that through several different elements, and those elements are dress-ups, sentence openers, and declarations. You just have a few of them here for you, but dress-ups are kind of the small things that you need to see in every paragraph, and we only teach them bit by bit. Okay, we teach them incrementally. But we might start off with an ly adverb. Now, there's a lot of ly adverbs in our language. They're very, very versatile parts of speech. Quickly, lethargically, surreptitiously. I mean, there's so many ly adverbs that are out there. But a lot of students don't necessarily have a lot of ly adverbs that they're ready to recall. So we'll show them how to use them, but then we'll give them a list of ly adverbs. And they can go through that list and they can say, oh, I like that word, I'll use that. And then they can use that in their paragraph. And something really interesting happens when you do that. When you have word lists like that you give them that they can use, it goes into their eyes, right? They see it, maybe the word lethally, right? I mean, that's not something that most fifth graders will use in common conversation, but maybe the word lethally, they say, oh, okay, the sea snake is lethally venomous, right? But the word goes into their eyes. It's their brain thinks about it for a little bit, then it goes down their arm and out their hand through their pen, and they've used that word a word that they might not otherwise have been able to use, therefore sounding smarter than they actually are. But what's really fascinating is the fact that they use that word has given them a little bit of practice with it. And if they do it again, they do it again, they do it several times, that word can move from a passive vocabulary where they just understand what the word means to an active vocabulary, something that they can actually utilize in their communication. And that's pretty neat. That's the power of giving students word lists with a objective, with an objective, with something they can do with those words. That's pretty neat. Anyway, we'll show them the ly adverb. So, sea snake is lethally venomous, or something like that. Then we're going to move on to who, which clause. Jimmy, who was a nice guy, saved the world, whatever. It adds information to whatever you're talking about. Then we'll move on. We might bring up the quality adjective. Jimmy was not just a nice guy. Maybe Jimmy was a fantastic guy, right? We try to identify a few adjectives that are weak, lame, or lousy, and then we replace those with ones that are have much higher value in communication and really can make your writing a much higher quality. Sentence openers. After we've done all our dress up, there's more of them there. We do just a few examples. We move on to sentence openers. And sentence openers really are kind of how sentences are begun, basically. Most sentences that you read, especially in dry textbooks, will be subject openers, which means that they begin with the subject. Jimmy was a nice guy, right? But there's other ways to begin sentences. And one of those is the prepositional opener. In this country, Jimmy is the nicest guy. I began it with a preposition. Specifically in this case was in, and so you can begin to vary how you begin your sentences. You can see the ing opener. Being a nice guy, Jimmy saved the world. That's a different way of saying it than just Jimmy was a nice guy and saved the world, right? I mean, there's a different way of phrasing your sentences, and that variation can create a tremendous increase in the quality of the writing that the student or even adult produces. Well, after we've gone through all of our sentence openers, we move on to decorations, the world of decorations. And these are things that are more stylish, but they can sometimes be over the top. So you really don't want them you don't want every one of them in every paragraph. You want one per paragraph. So for example, alliteration, that uses the same sound at the beginning of several words in a row, right? The amazing alligator always, ate. That's alliteration, right? But you don't want to have that in every single paragraph. It can kind of be a little bit over much. And so maybe we want to vary that a little bit. And so maybe in another paragraph, I want to ask a question. Did you know alligators eat a lot? Whatever. There's some decorations we can do. Similes, making those comparisons using like or as. The alligator is just like a log as it sat. So these decorations we can use to really make our writing pop, but we don't use them nearly as frequently as we do dress-ups. And this brings us really to this easy plus one. You see that little banner in the middle of the page there? The easy plus one concept. What does that mean? It's kind of an enigmatic thing that we bring to you at the very beginning of this workshop. But easy plus one, it just means the word EASY, easy. If one of these stylistic techniques that I'm teaching becomes easy, that means that a student can do it without help most of the time, and it doesn't sound really too goofy most of the time. I can now add a new one. All right. So if they get really good at that ly adverb, this is pretty easy, Dad. Well, I can go ahead and add the who which clause. Mom, I'm getting pretty good at that, right? If you can kind of tell that they're getting good at it, even if they don't say it, you can tell in their writing that it's getting to the point where it's getting pretty easy. We can bring a new one in, and that's that easy plus one. It's that incremental philosophy. And what's amazing about it is it's kind of like interest, compound interest, right? Just little bit by little bit, but boy, it makes a big difference. Easy plus one is like that. It's little bit by little bit, but because you're continuing to practice the things that you learned before, you can build on them. And at the end of the process, you have something much bigger than you would if you just address something, let it go. Address something new, let it go. Test it over this, let it go. That kind of a methodology doesn't really compound into something powerful at the end. And I just want to read this really quickly before I move to the next slide. It says important. We introduce a new stylistic technique when the previous one is mastered. That's really the idea of easy plus one. You wait till it's mastered and you introduce a new stylistic technique. And so you're able to bring more and more challenge to a student's writing. And during a school year, it might look something like this. You have the ly, you might go to who, which in week 2 or something. Then we go to the because clause, and then we have a strong verb, quality adjective, and goes on and on and on. All these different types, all these different stylistic techniques. We drip them in. We call it dripping them in as they become easy. And it might look something like this throughout the school year. What's really powerful about this, in my mind, I actually taught in high school. I have a secondary education degree. And what's powerful in my mind is the individualization that can happen here with students. So one student might be at a quality adjective. They might be ready for that. Another student might be at a strong verb, and they need to wait a little bit longer, and that's okay. And this methodology allows for that high level of individualization, which is easier sometimes in the homeschool environment, depending on how many children you have, I guess. But it is, I think, a very powerful part of this methodology. And in this right here, that we talked about, what about grading? You look at the difference of a unit 2 in September. We have a few structural things here. We have the name and date at the upper left-hand corner. We tell them very specific things to do. We have a few stylistic things. See that one per paragraph dress up. They have an ly adverb and a who, which clause. They just have a couple things they have to check off to make sure they have in their paragraph. But look in March, as we add things bit by bit, we have more things in structure. Now we have an introduction, we have a body. They need to make sure they have these different things. Then look at style. For each of those paragraphs, that paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, all of these have different dress ups, sentence openers, and this is very reasonable. This would be a higher level student, okay, that's going to be doing this. This would not be a third grader, but you can see where just an incremental approach can lead to much more complexity. And I'm sure you've seen that in other examples in your life, where just a bit by bit things can become much more complex. But because the student is mastering each part as we move along, they're able to succeed, and they're even able to excel and even enjoy the process. So let's just take a look back at our little source text and see how we could dress it up a bit. One day, a lucky dog found a juicy bone. That's a quality adjective. And eagerly, right, there's an ly adverb, headed home to enjoy it for dinner. We have a number 2 opener. On, that's a preposition, right? On his way, he encountered, not met, not saw, not crossed, encountered. That's a great verb. A low wooden bridge, which was built over a calm stream. That's a who, which clause we're talking about, right? I mean, so we can add these stylistic techniques in, and it really makes a big difference on how a written composition comes across. Frankly, there's a lot of people who have experienced IEW and have experienced it in a very positive way. They've encountered great success with their students, and we're so glad to hear that. I mean, that's very edifying, I'm sure, to Andrew. I mean, he definitely wants to serve people, and that's what we do. And so it's been very gratifying to be part of that journey for the short time that I've been with IEW. I've been there about 3 years, so it's been a lot of fun. And there's a lot of people who send us in a lot of their praise, and we're glad to receive that and to help them. So if IEW sounds like a good place for you to kind of rest when it comes to language arts instruction, the question might come up, where do you start? And Structure and Style for Students is our newest program. We just released Level A in November. Level B came out a few weeks ago, and it's a comprehensive writing course. This was shot. We actually have 2 years of it right now. In all 3 levels. We have A, B, and C. A is 3rd through 5th grade, B is 6th through 8th, and C is 9th through 12th. But Andrew provides instruction to those students, live students in the classroom, for 24 weeks. We filmed all that, and it was quite a journey. But at the end of the day, we have a fantastic, easy to use, and enjoyable, incremental, and very effective program to teach your children how to write extremely well, extraordinarily well, to become confident, competent communicators. It also includes vocabulary words, grammar, and literature suggestions. And in that sense, it can be very comprehensive as a writing course. Just very briefly, we're not going to go into this, but this just kind of to show you that no matter where your student is beginning at IEW, whether in 4th grade, you can see kind of each one of these little columns represents a grade level. They're in 4th grade or 7th grade, there is something in IEW that they can utilize to become a confident and competent communicator. So we definitely can help you along your journey, whether you're starting down in kindergarten on the far left, or if you're in 12th grade on the far upper right. And there are other options. Let's say you decide you want to do that Structure and Style for Students program for a year, and you say, man, I really like doing that. you might want to continue. Let me take a step back. You might want to learn how to teach this methodology on your own and do it on your own, not just having Andrew teach it, that you would teach it. Well, we have available a teacher training course called the Teaching Writing Instruction Style, or inside our organization, we call it TWSS, and that trains teachers to teach their students how to write and become confident communicators. And we actually have a package that includes that with the writing instruction style for students. I highly recommend that. Andrew can't answer all your students' questions if they're watching the video. When we've actually seen that when Andrew has taught on video before, that students try to raise their hands, even though he's clearly not in the room with them. But they do need support. They do need a coach to kind of come alongside them. And even though you may not be the teacher, to understand how the instruction style method works and how to approach it and how to utilize it, this product is profound, and it's extremely helpful. If you have it, you only need it once. It helps to learn it helps you to know how to teach writing for 3rd grade through 12th grade and really beyond. We have people using it in adult education programs. And so it's a kind of a one-time buy situation, but I do highly recommend it. You also can go on to year 2 for instructional style for students. The year 1 level C will be out this summer, and with that, we will have our first year completely published. Year 2 has already been filmed, but it's still in post-production, and that'll be coming out later this year and possibly early into next year. It will become available at that time. So once you've gone through the first year, there will likely be a year 2 ready for you. We also have theme-based writing lessons. So maybe the video option is not what you want to do because you want to teach it yourself, but you need more help than just the teacher training course. Maybe you want to have your lesson plans ready. You want source text already ready for you. We have that option as well. And you can see we have just 3 of our selections here. We have many, many more that are books that center in on a very specific topic. Like you see on the far left one, it's the ancient history-based writing lesson. It's all about ancient history. It talks about Egypt and ancient Rome and ancient Greece. And it goes through kind of the ancient world and talks about things that pertain to that. And so students are writing about a lot of issues and subject matter that pertain to ancient history. Now, I do want to be clear, this is not an ancient history course, but it is beneficial if you're wanting to write about something that is kind of parallel to what you're teaching in the rest of your classroom. Look in the middle, we have Bible-based writing lessons. If you're wanting to use the scripture as a means, as what you want your children to be writing about, you can do that. And you have that is a fantastic book. Also, the U.S. history-based writing lessons, we have a new one that just came out on the far right, the new edition of that, and that's extraordinary as well. For those of you who are wanting to teach your children to read, we do have a phonics program called the Primary Arts of Language. And so if you have younger students, again, before kind of that 3rd grade level where they're writing their own sentences and able to start doing some composition, we have a solution for it. It's called the Primary Arts of Language. It's based on a blended sight and sound method of instruction that was promulgated by Anna Eamon years ago. But anyway, it's a great program. My daughter has used it, and she enjoyed it very much. A lot of games, and it's very phonics based, very games based, and so not only is it effective, it's also a lot of fun for the student. There are some of the packages right there for reading and writing. If you're wanting to go into grammar specifically, now when we teach using structure and style, there is a level of embedded grammar there, right? When you're learning what a vivid adjective is, you start to get a good sense of what an adjective does. Right. I mean, so there's a level of grammar, of embedded grammar, that is taught in the structure and style method, but I don't want to misrepresent. It is not a grammar course in and of itself. We do have formal grammar, and that is in the form of a program called Fix It. And it takes about 15 minutes a day. My kids personally use it, and they love it. It's a lot of fun. They actually go through a little segments of a story that have embedded errors in it, and they get to fix it, right? They get to find those errors and fix them. And bit by bit, incrementally, again, it's easy plus one. It's the same kind of approach. The students will learn not only capitalization and punctuation, they begin to learn what a noun is and how to identify nouns and verbs and articles, and it goes on and on and on. And Andrew will tell you that level 6 is so challenging that I believe he was challenged by it, and he's pretty good at the English language. So I've not done it personally, but I have looked through it, and it is indeed a challenge. And so that incremental approach, again, when you layer mastery over mastery, you can get to some pretty incredible places. And so each one of these books, we have six levels. Each one of those takes about a year, and you really should only look at those maybe about fourth grade or up. You know, an eighth grader could start at level one; it'd be no problem. But before fourth grade, starting at level one might be a little bit more difficult. Okay, we have a few packages for that. I'll just leave it at that. We have packages for any of our programs that can help you to, if you want to buy bigger amounts, you can save a little bit of money. So we also have poetry and literature and speaking. This poetry memorization program, it's actually a linguistic development through poetry memorization. Is actually, Andrew explains the methodology behind it extraordinarily well in a talk called Nurturing Competent Communicators. If you've never heard that talk, I highly recommend it. And you can get that talk at IEW.com/NCC2020 if you want to listen to that. It's a fantastic talk by Andrew Kudawa. But that poetry memorization program helps students to gain tremendous linguistic aptitude. Again, memory, mastery bit by bit, an incremental approach. But you can see on the right there, on the left picture, the timeline of teaching the classics. Excuse me. That is a fantastic program. If you want to learn how to be able to engage your students about literature, that is a fantastic program by the Andrews fame. Adam Andrews is his name. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see that we also, poetry memorization has actually speeches in it in the higher levels as well, so that's why it's there. But we also have Speech Boot Camp. It's a very popular program that Andrew himself wrote and utilizes, or has utilized. But we also have partnered with the NCFCA, which is, I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's a Christian fellowship of speakers and they do forensics, they do debate. And so we've partnered with them and we've produced the materials for their program. So that's also something to consider as NCFCA. They're a great organization, but we have their materials available as well. If you're wanting to get into spelling, we have a solution for that. It's called the Phonetic Zoo. And the Phonetic Zoo is a phonetically based program. And what's really fascinating about it to me is that the students actually work independently at their own pace. That's a lot of parents like that. They like the fact their students are spending 15 minutes on spelling while they're getting lunch ready or whatever. But once they understand how to do this program, it really does have a lot of student-driven work to it. And so that's very, very handy. And again, it uses the mastery approach. And once a student knows it, they know that they know that they know it, and they can move on to the next lesson. And you might have two students that are using this program that are on different lessons, and that's okay. They don't necessarily need to know where the other student is at, but you can celebrate their successes together and move on. And this is a program that is exceptionally beneficial to students who struggle with dyslexia. So that's a handy thing to know. Here's some options on where to start. If you're wanting to get the writing program, specifically the structure and style for students, you can see that we have a basic package on the far left. That's just the writing program. In the middle, we have that paired with grammar, with Fix-It Grammar, with a student and teacher book, as well as a little kind of a fun thing to have called Portable Walls. It's a nice to have tool for your growing communicator. And so that we throw that in there as well, and you're able to save a little bit of money by doing that package. If you're wanting to go all in, if you're like, man, I want to understand exactly how this works, and I want to be able to help my students as best as I possibly can, we have the Premier package on the far right, and that is the big package. That's the big one. That comes with not only a year of structure and style for students, but also, of course, Portable Walls and Fix-It. But it also includes the Teaching, Writing, Structure and Style program. You can see it's about $100 more than the Plus package, but that program by itself normally retails for about $189. So it really is a fantastic deal. And to kind of top that off, we actually include a word right now, which is kind of a really great thesaurus. It's a thematic thesaurus. And at first, I was kind of, when I first saw it, I wasn't all that impressed. I mean, looking at the cover, and then I opened it up and I said, oh, this would be very, very helpful for a student. I would encourage you to check that out. But anyway, if you're wanting to go all in, that package is a good deal. Well, I do want to thank you for coming. There's a few things left here. If you have one of our magalogs, you can check out pages 24 and 25. There's some various kind of samples that you can look at. And if you don't have our magazine, you can either order it from us, or you can go to our website and under I believe the support tab, I believe it's the purple tab, you can click on Magalog, and you can at least view the electronic version. But you can also order that from us. You can request the Magalog. When you go to that Magalog tab, or when you go to that page that has the Magalog on it, you can say, I want a Magalog, and we'll send one out to you. But if you have one, pages 24 and 25 have a lot of great stuff, including free sample lessons. There's also on those pages the premium membership that is free for 3 months. Now, this is a membership that is very, very useful. It has things like a checklist generator that you can make for specific students. If you want to add the LY ad for this student and add a strong verb for that one, you can do that with this online generator that you can then print out and look professional. It's a fantastic tool. But there's a lot more to it. I don't have time to really go into that, but if you're serious about structure and style, about helping your students be the best they can be is concerning communication, I highly recommend you check out that premium membership. It's $39 a year to re-up it after that first 2 months is over. There is a free shipping code for 1 month that you can find by going to iew.com/virtual. Clearly, the COVID situation in our country right now has necessitated a lot of changes. And so in order to help with that, we have a virtual exhibitor on that landing page that has a lot of the questions you can have answered there. It has a lot of our resources, but scroll down to the very bottom, and you will see a free shipping code. Use that with your order within 30 days of the end of I believe this Saturday. I think it's within 30 days of this Saturday. And you get free shipping from IEW. So domestic shipping. And one more thing, on the lower right-hand corner, you'll see our little seal there. It says no time limit, 100% satisfaction guarantee. We do not want you to be saddled with an investment that you're not happy to have. If IEW just is not working for you, we are happy to either exchange whatever you order or refund your money entirely. We want you to be satisfied as a customer. And if you're satisfied, wonderful. If you're not, we really do want to take care of you, and we stand by that. I work a lot with customer service at IEW, and we're serious about this. So that's something to keep in mind as you're considering your options. So.